Want to say a few words on this decision by FINA, the World Swimming Body. I'm not sure what that acronym actually stands for. Federation Internet. I'm not sure, but anyway, it's the World Swimming Body, and they have reached a decision that basically trans women, those people who have transitioned and self-identify as women, um, will be banned from international competitions if they haven't transitioned before the age of 12. Now, predictably, it's being called transphobic and bigoted, um, but many are welcoming this as a victory for common sense. Um, and I'm with the majority on this one. Now, the interesting thing about this is FINA actually consulted the relevant medical personnel with the question if someone had transitioned after puberty, would they still have some of those male hormones left over? And the Mayo Clinic, which is a well known center in the United States, said that yes, there can never be a guarantee that those male hormones would be completely erased. Um, So what people like Leah Thomas are saying is that this is discriminatory. Others in the trans community itself, for example, Caitlyn Jenner, have said fair is fair. For a long time now, women in competitive sport have been arguing that trans women have an unfair advantage because they have. It's not just about hormones; it's also about bone structure. It's about a whole range of other things. I think the best solution going forward is to have a third category. That way, trans people cannot say that they're not being given opportunities, but it wouldn't be a situation where a minority are dictating that their rights matter more than the majority. Now, the overwhelming majority of biological women competing in these events, and it isn't just swimming, it's true of other sports as well, feel that people who were born biologically male have an advantage. It's why male and female categories have always been separate. I came across an interesting image the other day. It showed a man who was 67 kilos lifting weights, and the weights were the same as a heavier woman. Now, the woman was heavier than the man, but because of muscle mass, the man was lifting the same weight, even though the woman was physically bigger. It's to do with muscle mass, it's to do with a lot of factors. Um, And I just think this is a victory for common sense. There is one part of it I would strongly question, though. This idea of transitioning before the age of 12. Now, I don't know what the rules are in the United States, but in the UK, you need to be 18 to have sex reassignment surgery. You have to be 18 to do that. I've always felt the very notion of trans children is utterly absurd. I think you can have children that may be showing the signs of gender dysphoria, or you may simply have a little boy who is gay or who will turn out to be gay. I honestly think with children, young children, we need to be very careful that adults are not taking impressionable children at their every word. Children do change their minds about things. It's a confusing time. And a child's mind is not fully developed to know. I mean, you cannot tell me that a 5-year old little boy knows for a fact that he wants to be a girl. He might simply be an effeminate male. So I think it is irresponsible and reckless to even talk about the notion of trans children. I frankly find it a little bit disturbing. Um, I mean, I recall a case here in the UK where there were parents that somewhere in East Anglia, and they actually said they would not, as they put it, ascribe a gender to their child until the child was 18 years of age. Now, this obviously causes problems. Why? Because what are they going to say to their teenage daughter if it's a girl when she has her first period? Or their teenage son if it's a boy when he starts developing puberty and everything that comes with that? Are they just going to say, oh, well, you might be a boy or you might be a girl, it's up to you? That's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. I don't think it's compassionate to make a confusing time in life even more confusing. But I think that this pushback is a good thing. Why? Because for too long the trans lobby has been dictating and saying that we have to have it this way, otherwise it's transphobia, it's discrimination. But I would argue that the rights of the majority of women trump the minority of trans women. There's another interesting factor to all of this. There's a lot more focus on trans women, that is, biological men who transition to become women. Um, More so than trans men, that is, biological women who transition to become men. And I was reading a piece in The Spectator today. I can't remember who the columnist was, but they made an interesting point, which is the reason the latter is less controversial, less of an issue, is because women, biological women, have fought hard to get equality, to get equal opportunities as men. So the idea that some men are, as they would see it, infiltrating and, for want of a better term, into women's events is seen as threatening. Now, in the case of biological men, if someone who's born a woman transitions to a man, then wants to enter men's events, it's just seen as less threatening because of the physical difference and a range of other factors. So that's interesting. But here in the UK, of course, Boris Johnson's weighed in on it. Some trans activists have said he's made their life harder. He simply offered his opinion. Um, the health secretary, Sajid Javid, has said, as health secretary, he is naturally going to say that sex matters. Liz Truss has unapologetically stood up for women. So I have to say the Tories are a lot stronger on this issue. Labour is still being politically correct. Keir Starmer cannot clearly say what a woman is. Frankly, that's pathetic. It's absolutely pathetic. His Australian counterpart, the Labour leader and new Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, could. That was something he and Scott Morrison agreed on in the debate, the recent prime ministerial debate. They both said a woman is an adult human female. Uncontroversial. The way I look at all of this is I genuinely do have sympathy with trans people. I sympathise with people um, who are going through gender dysphoria. It must be a very uncomfortable thing to be miserable in yourself, to feel that you are someone else. And I think that if transitioning as an adult makes them happy, then who are we to say they shouldn't have a right to do that? But when it gets into areas such as competitive sport, penal sentencing, prison places, women's spaces, those are issues which affect other people. So this notion of individual liberty, it's great, it's an important thing. But when it starts violating other people's liberty, that's when it becomes a question mark. And that's what the trans lobby need to understand. They talk about their rights. Leah Thomas was saying, I'll use the pronoun her right to be happy. But what about the right for biological women not to feel that they have an unfair advantage? That the years of struggling to, I mean, if you look at the year of the Olympics, it was very restrictive for women. Women had to wear ridiculously long dresses, which were just not practical. In fact, I may have a picture here. I've got this book, Londoners Through a Lens. I wasn't going to do this, but I've just remembered. There's a picture in this of the early Olympics. And just shows you how restrictive it was for women back then. Well, nowadays, women can do everything men can do. Women can box, women can play football, um, but they're separate categories. I mean, I would never ever support mixed sex martial arts, never. I think it would be a travesty for more than one reason. Firstly, it's wrong because no matter how you gloss it over, the average woman is not as physically strong as the average man. Yeah, here we go. London Olympics 1908. So that's a female competitor. You see, she's wearing a long dress. It's It's obviously not practical. My point is that women's sport has come a long way. Um, but you wouldn't have a situation where a male fighter built like Anthony Joshua is going to go in with a woman. It's just nonsensical. It's just it would. I think any reasonable person would say that is a travesty. The other thing, of course, is it's dishonest competition because male fighters would, I suspect, a lot of them would hold back because they wouldn't want to be seen as hitting a woman, right? And it's kind of a no-win situation for them. If they win, they're a brute who beats women. If they lose, then they lost to a woman. So it's uh, just a situation that shouldn't happen. Men and women are different. This doesn't mean men and women are not equal. They're different. And a big issue I have with the trans lobby is this forced insistence. I mean, it goes beyond individual want and individual liberty because they're now trying to get to the point of legislation or, for example, using the wrong pronoun should be considered a hate crime or a criminal offence. I'm against bullying. I'm against anyone being given a hard time for no reason. But I insist that people should have the freedom to say, I don't believe someone who's biologically male is a woman. I believe people should have the freedom to say that because it's a fact. Legally, someone could be a trans woman, but nothing will convince me and many other people that someone born with male genitalia will ever be the same as a biological woman. They just won't. And no amount of smearing people as transphobes will change that. Um, so I think that the way to approach people who suffer from gender dysphoria is with sympathy, with compassion, certainly shun bullying, but I don't think that the rights of a minority should trump the rights of the majority. I just don't. So I think this is the right decision by FINA, and I hope more sports follow suit. It's not discrimination. If anything, it's discrimination against biological women to continue with the status quo before, to allow people born with male genitalia, it doesn't matter if they've had a transition, because as the Mayo Clinic has said, some of those hormones will always be left over. You can never completely eradicate. So, and it isn't just that, it's muscle mass, it's a lot of things. Um, I mean, it's basically eradicating women's sport. So this is a victory for common sense. Like I say, though, the only bit I'm not comfortable with is this notion of trans children. I think the very concept is ridiculous. Some have said that FINA is doing this deliberately because they know nobody transitions before the age of 12. So it's kind of a subtle way of basically banning all trans women, which is it's the right thing. If that's their position, they should just say it instead of messing around with wording. Because actually most people support that anyway.